Good night. All right, good night.
Yeah, I know.
On the mic with Mike. He's like a guru.
No, he's a businessman with a great radio show.
And he supports the nonprofit.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Mike King here. This is part of the Mike King Biz Media Network, ESPN Richmond 106.1. The Breeze, Bill Bevins, Bud Myers over there, the Breeze, VABreeze.com, as well as International Business Coach Radio. What we do is we talk to the best and the brightest. We'd like to thank you for tuning in. We got to do a little bit of housekeeping. We'll be back in just a moment. On the mic, Mike, we are back. What we do is we talk to the game changers out there. We got one of the hottest podcasters, media personalities around. Welcome to the program, ma'am.
Thank you, Mike.
All righty. So real quickly, tell us who you are and what you do.
Jessica Ellett. My husband and I own River City Consulting, and I run River City Podcast and a bunch of other podcasts.
All righty. How'd you come to the podcast world?
Well, I am a huge fan of true crime. So that's how it started. My dad was a sheriff. He was an investigator. He had a lot of cases that were on TV, Dateline, and I just got really into that growing up. So one day I just thought when podcasts started getting popular, I'd love to get into that space. But it started out as a podcast where we just drank a lot and then talked about a crime documentary. That was my first one. So it was really just fun, silly, kind of a way to get through the pandemic. And then we were approached by Reopen the Case. So Reopen the Case is something that CBS airs.
Okay, so John does.
Right. So they came to me and said, hey, we've heard you host this podcast, Cocktails and Crime. Would you be interested in hosting our podcast version of Reopen the Case, which is solving cold cases in Virginia? And I said, absolutely. I would love to do that. I would love to volunteer for that. So I actually became their communications person and PR person, and I host the podcast. So then I kind of upgraded my equipment, and then I was kind of in the game, for real. And then we decided to launch River City Podcast to help really get exposure to local businesses and nonprofits and have that bigger conversation, I guess. So that's how it all sort of started. I'm getting ready to actually launch another podcast next week, and I'm super excited about it. And that's going to be crime as well, but it's going to be a little more serious, I guess, called Fixated.
Did John have a partner? It was a man, and they were doing a program together about like historical places in Richmond that they were tied to crime scenes.
I don't know, but I want to know all about that.
A person called me and he had partnered with John, and they were doing something together. And he was like, you won't believe how many crime scene locations that are famous, or I don't know whether they're famous or infamous, but in the Richmond area. Okay, so everybody thinks that they're a sleuth at home trying to solve crimes.
They do.
Okay. Now, we see a crime that happens and we want it wrapped up in the time of the show.
Right.
When you tell people you have a podcast, everybody has a podcast.
Right.
And then you drop on them what yours is. What's the reaction?
Well, I don't drop Cocktails and Crime on everyone.
You have to know
who
you're dealing with.
You got to know who you're dealing with, because frankly, we get kind of dirty. We got 4 girls in there. Some of us have been in radio, radio girls. We get kind of wily in there.
Okay. So you just can't tell everybody to tune in because there may be shocks in their systems.
Yeah, it may be very shocking. Now, Reopen the Case is one I can send to everybody. And Reopen the Case is positioned as, hey, this was 15 years ago. You were in a different place 15 years ago. You may have had alliances that you no longer have, relationships you no longer have. So maybe something in this story will make you go back and think about it and actually be willing to come to the table to the police and share information that could solve it. So that one I tell everybody, because the more people that listen, the more chance there is that somebody listening knows information that could help solve a case. And we're having victims come into the studio and talking to them and, victims' families. And it's like, when you hear somebody who lost their daughter 15 years ago, has absolutely no closure, you want to do everything you can.
A lot of time, if you ask someone, there was a crime committed on September 7th of, 1997. do you remember? The person's gonna say, no, I don't. But then all of a sudden they start thinking backwards, saying, well, it happened at this location and during this time. Sometimes people were able to remember and recall, you know what, I did see something that day that made no sense. It didn't. And then you say that was the piece that we've been waiting for.
Right. Or they hear the podcast or see this on CBS and they think they've been actually carrying it with them. They've been carrying what they know for all these years and have been afraid to say anything or not ready to say anything. And maybe just having the case highlighted, it's that time where they can get that off their conscience. Maybe they were protecting a friend, maybe they were protecting a spouse, and they're divorced now and they're like ready to tell the truth, because that's a big weight to carry. If you're aware of a murder, if you're aware of a crime and you were involved, maybe just even on the outside, there's no way you're walking around not holding on to that.
No,
So,
you feel it and you're carrying. That's a weight to carry. What do you do for nonprofits?
so we started an initiative in, well, right kind of during the pandemic. So a lot, as you know, from talking to nonprofits, they got cut off. There was no more funding
Right.
for them. And we just kind of brainstorm, like, what can we do as an ad agency locally to help support these guys? So we came up with We Are River City, and We Are River City is a way to offer businesses that want to support the community a platform to say, hey, if you're a nonprofit and you need our services, we're going to give you however much money off. We're going to give you a big discount. We're going to be available to sponsor your stuff. So we list the businesses with what they do to support the nonprofits. And then we also list the nonprofits that are involved in our program. And then every month we feature one of our nonprofits on our website. We do a podcast with them at no cost. We'll go out to events and get drone footage for them, do a podcast with them, just anything we can do to really get them exposure, because that's how they get funding.
How can people find information about you?
So we are rivercity.com or rivercityconsulting.com. You can go to the We Are River City tab and see all of our nonprofits, all of our businesses that support them, and you can apply to participate right there.
A person is thinking about starting a podcast. What does it take to be a positive, a podcast that is good? What do they need to do?
Well, they need equipment. I mean, a lot of people you see doing podcasts are doing it from their cell phone. It's just not going to convey. You need to figure out the platform that works for you to host your podcast once you've done it. You definitely need to put some money into some good intro music. You need to have a good voice. I mean, frankly, there's people out there doing podcasts that I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear your voice. So, you need to kind of know what your strengths are. And then you need to do research. You need to really figure out a niche. You need to find a good name, because like you said, there's thousands out there. You need to get a good logo. You need to have something that works for your cover art, that attracts people, just like a book cover would be. And then you need to make sure everything's set up to feed out to all the podcast platforms like Apple Podcast and Spotify and Amazon. And, if it takes a minute to get all that approved, if you can't get it out on the platforms that people can find you, you're done.
Do you help podcasters with getting their podcast published or whatever? Do you help, or people need to just bring it to you? Or
well, we're not producing so we're doing our own. We've got 5 that we do out of our studio. If somebody wants to put together their own podcast, the only way we would really support them would be with branding and marketing. So we might help them with their cover art, their logo, kind of their tagline or something like that. But that's too much. I don't
you're not into that right there.
Mm-mm.
Alrighty, Jess is here with us on the mic. Mike, we are the best business radio program around. What's new and exciting for you guys? What can people look forward to?
New and exciting. Well, we've got a lot of events we're going out to with the pod car. I don't know if you've seen the River City pod car.
No, man.
So my face is on a car. And it is only because of our branding photographer, because she takes some good pictures and she has a good makeup artist. But we take that pod car. It's a little BMW i3. It's all electric. And we'll take that out to events and podcasts from events. So we're going to be out at the Virginia Down Syndrome Association. They have a 5K run.
That's my family.
I love them
That's
so
what,
much.
Shout out to the whole crew.
The whole crew.
Now, so they made me their media guy.
Really?
So I'm here. I was dancing with the stars. I was one of the judges. I didn't have talent, but I was going to help them out. So shout out to those guys. So you're out there, and so your BMW is electric.
It's all electric.
Hmm.
Which is wild. I mean, we plug that thing into the garage just like you would your cell phone at night.
Shout out to John Foley. He was just here with Recharged. He was just here the other day talking about EV. He is the EV dealership on Broad Street.
Okay.
So he's-
Richmond needs to step it up, because I'll tell you, you can run out of charge pretty quick in this city, because there's not a lot of places to charge up.
and what are you doing then? Running frantic trying to find a place to charge?
Well, so you know how some people have like low gas anxiety? I've got low battery anxiety. So once I see that thing start hitting like 30 miles, I bring it on home. I can't handle that.
There you go, Jess. It's at River City. Once again, how can people find you, ma'am?
rivercityconsulting.com, and you can also go to River City Podcast on Facebook.
There you go.
On the mic with Mike. 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 He's like a hero.
No, he's a businessman with a great radio show.
And he supports the nonprofit.
Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you support Jess. Okay, one last time, how can people find you?
rivercityconsulting.com.
Their social media game is on fire. It truly is. I enjoy when I see it. So make sure you support her sponsors. Just like I always say, this microphone ain't free. Plus, my grandkids need stuff.
My name is Isabel, and you're listening to My King Biz. Hubby, that's my scam.
All righty, folks, take care. We got to go.